Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. Now we're taking a look here today at AAVE, and the main reason is because my patrons requested that I cover this, so thank you so much to my community members for recommending that I review this here again today. I've covered this in the past, and honestly, I'm invested in this one previously as well when the price was much lower, and I'm very thankful that I held on because this is something that's got some good fundamentals. We're not here for the fundamentals. This is just a technical analysis, so just note that. Also, bear in mind this is for educational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, so I always recommend you do your own research and take ownership of your trades. And my goal here is to help you become a better, more effective trader so you can trade for a lifetime, not just for one day. And if you're more of an autopilot kind of person, I share my trades with my community members, link in the description below. And I would say average somewhere in the range of 2 to 4 trades per week, but traditionally I'm hovering around about an 80% success rate overall. And things are going very well. We got a pretty good group of folks there, and things are growing. And check that out in your own time, of course. Moving forward as well, also recommend you check out my Telegram community. Good group of folks there too. There's no cost there. Just a place for you to interact and learn as much as you can. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into the charts. Let's check it out. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at AAVE. And just before we do, we look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first, get a quick baseline on the market. So we'll just take a quick peek at the 4-hour charts first and kind of dive into AAVE here today. And just note, I always use TradingView desktop application, and this is essentially the best thing to use. I don't know how else to say it. I recommend the paid version though, if you are considering it, just based on the simple fact that it gives you more than 2 indicators and it works very well. I have a link in the description below for a free month if you'd like to check that out, see if you like it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour chart here. So for Bitcoin, first of all, we've had some pretty intense volume in the last 24 hours, to say the least. We had this ramp up and ramp down, and then a stronger ramp back up here recently. So pretty awesome, all things considered, because the simple fact that it's actually moving in the direction we all want it to go, right? We want this to get to 50,000 plus, have that last bull run. That being said, we're looking at 30,000 for a support level. Secondary support is 37,000, and now tertiary support is 40,000. And I'm saying it's a support level because the 4-hour time frame did close above, as well as the fact we have a pretty strong candlestick here just started a couple of hours ago. So all in all, pretty good shape here for Bitcoin. Moving forward, bear in mind there is a resistance level at 42,500. That is up here. The price is about halfway there, so just pay attention to how that works. Maybe set your set an alert, see what happens when it tests that resistance level. If it gets rejected, it might come crashing back down to 40,000, and we want to see how that reacts. I also speculate with the extreme price movement from today, it will probably retrace down perhaps to 40,000 in the near future, just to kind of test that support level, see how it responds. And based on its response there, we'll determine our next entry point. So, my patrons and we had a pretty good take profit target here recently. It took a few days to get through there, but it worked out with this breaking above 40,000. But my guess is it's gonna trail down. It's going to consolidate a little bit lower and test 40,000, and that would probably be a good indication of a buy signal to go long. Again, depending on how it responds. But regardless, that's just kind of what we're looking at there for Bitcoin. Moving on to Ethereum, we've got a major resistance here at 2,900. That's been a strong resistance for a long time, but today we had that fork, and that caused a massive increase in price. So, Ethereum's doing very well. It's kind of breaking away from Bitcoin in a sense because of the most recent news. Definitely do your own research here, but Ethereum has some really strong fundamentals that are causing the price action to go sideways. To go ascending sideways. In other words, it's going sideways, but it's going up pretty fast. And this reminds me too of this run here. If you see this, it's very reminiscent of it. Not exactly the same, but it looks a lot better than Bitcoin's run, right? See, Bitcoin ramped up, sideways, retrace, and increase, whereas Ethereum is mostly just increase. Slight retracement, but that was just the knee-jerk reaction to Bitcoin selling off sub 40,000 because we weren't sure what was happening. So either way, long story short here is Ethereum's a pretty good investment at this point. It's doing very well, and there's a strong chance it'll test 2,900 in the next couple of days, possibly past that. If it rejects at 2,900, it'll probably continue to test it and then break above eventually, just based on the fact that this has been tested 10 times and is likely to continue to break through. Okay, so that's kind of just the thought process there for Ethereum. Let's take a look at the 1-day chart for AAVE and then move on. One thing to note here, of course, is that average true range for AAVE and I pretty much just base this off of before Bitcoin sold off. The first major sell-off for Bitcoin is like April 17th through the 22nd. If you look at that here, you can see this decline. That was a sell-off from Bitcoin, but it ramped up very well afterwards and did good. So all in all, what I'm trying to get at here is the fact that the average true range for AAVE, it's already past that. It's back in its average true range of roughly about 300, upwards of about 475. So we could say 300 to 500 is the range that AAVE typically hovers within, and it's back up above that potential resistance, now support. Okay, so if you were kind of arbitrarily throw a number out there, 300 would be a support level now moving forward. So we shouldn't expect the price to drop below 300 as long as Bitcoin stays over 30,000, right? Preferably over basically 37,000, because that seems to be the point in which we had a major increase in a lot of altcoins, and we see that here with AAVE as well. Looking at the one-day chart, we can tell the RSI is a bit on the high side. It's getting closer to 70, so just bear in mind, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to retrace or turn back around, but it does work as a resistance sometimes. So unless it breaks through there on the one-day chart, we'll see what happens. We do have a strong convergence on the 23rd, which was normal. That's when Bitcoin broke 30,000. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour chart, quickly identify the moving averages here. And something to note here with AAVE as well is the fact that the price is above both moving averages, the 50 and the 200. This is extremely important because they're both working as support levels. Do you see how the 50 worked as a resistance, but now it's considered a support? That's pretty awesome, just in the sense that AAVE is now able to continue to increase, right? And if it does come back down, it'll test and perhaps stay above the 50-day simple moving average. Moving on as well, we also have the RSI up over 70. That's pretty standard in the 4-hour chart with this kind of movement. Just something to pay attention to. You don't necessarily have to sell or trim, perhaps. That's usually an indication that you want to consider that, but it depends on what kind of trader you're doing, right? If you're trading for the long term, for swing trading, different story, hold on. But if you are considering, maybe a scalp or a short-term day trade, then you might want to consider taking your profits before it retraces back down. But the key with the RSI is to consider selling when the RSI comes down and crosses the plane of 70. That's usually the best time to do it, because you usually can always squeeze out a little extra, maybe 2 to 5% out of that. Just something to consider. There's more that goes into that, of course, but that's just kind of the big picture. We had a strong convergence on the 4th of August. That makes sense. That was essentially yesterday, so I'm just going to mark that really quick. That is approximately, let's get a better marking there, right here. Okay, so that's basically, I like to mark that because the convergence on the 4-hour chart for the MACD is probably one of the most important buy signals you could have. So if you're considering swing trading or long term, that's probably the best indication of an entry point, because usually when you look at the 1-hour chart, there's an overlap of some sort within a few hours on the Ichimoku cloud, which is also equally as important as the MACD indication. That being said, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So first of all, we turn off the SMA just because they're less relevant on shorter time frames, and we want to look at the Ichimoku cloud. Look at that. That is no surprise. Look at that. No less than 1 to 2 hours later, after we had a convergence on the MACD, the Ichimoku cloud tells us we got a buy signal. And the common rule of thumb is that if you are using the Ichimoku cloud on the 1-hour chart, that's the best time frame to use it, by the way. When it's above, it's considered a buy signal. When it's below, it's considered a sell signal, right? So you're going short here in this case, you're going long here. In this case, we're going long as well. So all in all, pretty darn good indications here. So, if you were to ever set up an indicator or an alert, set an alert on TradingView on basically the convergence on the MACD. As soon as the 12 intersects with the 26, it'll give you a buy signal, right? And then what you do is you confirm that by looking at the 1-hour chart to see if we're above the cloud. If you're not above the cloud yet, maybe wait to confirm. It's very rare that the convergence on the MACD doesn't coalesce with the 1-hour chart on the Ichimoku cloud. Just something to pay attention to. Those are things that I utilize day in and day out on my Signal group, which is available through my Patreon account too, by the way, link in the description below. And that is essentially just an opportunity where I share all my trades with my community members, and everything we're learning here today, everything I'm using, I use that in my analysis. It gives me approximately an 80% success rate overall with my signals. And right now we are trending really close to about 80%, 78 to 80% right now. That being said, we're also going to look at the TD sequential. And if you're not Familiar with TD sequential? Basically just tells you if you have any kind of exhaustion. It's really good on the 1 hour chart, 4 hour chart as well. But primarily I use it on the 1 hour chart just to see. And if you can look back here, you see how it counts up to a 9 and then resets and doesn't keep counting. That basically tells us we're in exhaustion. So this was a state of exhaustion for the bulls, which is why they need to have a consolidation period afterwards. Then there's ramp up and over. So it's actually a really good bull run. We surprisingly got a lot of momentum out of this here, but that's obviously based on today's movement from Bitcoin. Hadn't Bitcoin moved like that, we wouldn't have seen the same action from AAVE. But this is great because AAVE needed to take off because it's been very low for quite a while. It's a very strong fundamental coin. I recommend you do your own research, of course, but there's some good stuff here. And this does show that it's kind of back on track, right? Anything in the 300s is still a good value for AAVE. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the 1 hour chart. Let's go ahead and move on to the 15 to see if we can identify any type of entry point here potentially. And just to note, the VWAP is this blue line here. That's the volume weighted average price. It's one of my favorite indicators. It's a day trading tool. Typically, it's good on 15-minute charts or lower. Now, the reason why it's helpful in this case is because the 15-minute chart helps us understand good confirmation. And you have confirmation when the price is above VWAP because it's considered a support and resistance level. Because it takes the volume last 24 hours and expresses it as a price. It resets every 24 hours too, which is why you see these sharp lines every once in a while. So every 12 hours it resets. So there's a reset there, there's a reset there, and it's going to reset in about 30 minutes here. That being said though, the standard deviation, basically the deviation between the price action and the line, will tell you a lot about retracement. So if you see back here, if we go with this deviation here, that was upwards of about 7%. And the closer you get to 10%, the more likely it is to come back down. Okay, so you get too far away from that volume average, then it's going to come back down. That's the general idea of the VWAP. So again, it works as a support and resistance level, and you can kind of see here that it worked as a potential support. Even though it broke below, it didn't break that far below. Also, note the EMA line is the red line there. The red line basically tells us that the price is above, or basically in the direction you want it to head. Okay, so for lack of better terms, if you think about the EMA line, it's considered a momentous indicator. It's the same thing as the MACD. The MACD has EMA lines intersecting and converging and diverging, right? It gives us buy signals. Same thing here as well. When the price is above EMA, it's considered a bullish trend. When it's below, it's considered bearish, right? We could look back and see a lot of bearish momentum where the price keeps staying down and getting held below. Right now, the price is holding above and staying strong. Even right now, it's in consolidation, so it's not super consistent. But as you can see here, when you identify a run that looks like this, there's a great chance it's just going to continue. Obviously, it retraced here, and it got up too high, retraced again. So what I'm getting at is the EMA line is a good tool to use to confirm that you're on the right track. You're floating downstream with the bears, correction, with the bulls, and you're not trying to fight upstream with the bears, if that makes sense. I know that's a terrible analogy because bears and bulls don't float in the water, right? Actually, I'm sure bears probably could, but bulls might have some trouble. But what I'm getting at is the fact that, why fight upstream? Why try to swim upstream? Why not just cruise downstream? That makes more sense, doesn't it? Don't use any energy. You just kind of go with the flow. Well, if you can identify the flow of the market, then you're essentially going with the current. So, that's just kind of the analogy I like to bring. And what you also want to look at too is how in which the price is confirming. In other words, if we take a look here and we look at the price, right? So right here at this point, the inception point where the price just took off. If we look at that and we see that the price is above EMA and VWAP, that's ultimately what you're looking for. So check number 1, price above EMA, great. Check number 2, price over VWAP, awesome, we got confirmation. The last way to fully confirm the fact you're in the right direction is to wait 30 minutes. I know it seems difficult when you're sitting here trying to take entry. You may not have all the time in the day, and that's okay. That's where I come in. But what I'm getting at here is that when you identify 2 solid green bars above EMA and VWAP, they look like this, that tells you that that's considered a buy signal. And this is essentially a notification that I have set up through my TradingView that I share with my patrons, but that basically tells me that I have confirmation above EMA and VWAP, and it's telling me to take entry. Okay, so I consider taking entry here. Just say, for example, I had taken entry there, and I had my notification set up here today, then I would have gotten an alert to take entry here, and I would have taken about approximately 21% gain to this point right now, had I entered back then. Okay. Again, easier said than done, of course, because I didn't have full confirmation either that the bulls were in control, but I also kind of did too, because I have 30 minutes of bullish momentum, right? That's why the waiting 30 minutes is important. That's a key, because if you don't wait 30 minutes, just so you jump in after 2 minutes, then it could very well retrace and you lose your position, you get stopped out, right? So just something to kind of consider. Those are things I like to utilize in my trading day to day, and I share my trades with my patrons. And that's, again, a link in the description below. Feel free to reference that. So far, I've had some pretty darn good success. We're over 80% at this point, and things are going very well. But all in all, I'd say I hover between 78 to about 85%, depending on the month. Okay? So check that out in your own time. But this is the main thing I want to cover with you here. Be safe, be careful. Oh, one last thing, I did want to give you my prediction, because I think it is important to understand. AAVE is already within its average true range. Okay, so 3 to 500 is its range. Before, that's where it spent the most time. It's at 375 right now. So yes, it could very well break 500 and come upwards to test 665, its previous all-time high. However, is it going to do that right away? No, it's had a lot of price movement in the last 24 hours, and I think that Bitcoin, unless Bitcoin can blast through 42,500, we're going to see some sideways action from AAVE for at least a couple of days. And by the way, it's completely normal and completely invited. We want to see some sideways action from AAVE so it doesn't retrace and come tumbling back down. Because a good price action, again, is going to be up, over, up, over. That's what we want to see. That's what a really good bull run consists of. So at this point, with it having been, I think we looked at this already, what was 20 some odd? Yeah, about 22% in 2 days. That's some significant growth. We want to see some sideways action for a day or two and then have it take off again. But I don't think it will take off unless Bitcoin exceeds 42,500. Okay, so we got to see that. So Bitcoin has to come up here past this point in order for us to get a breakout from AAVE. All right, so there you have it. That's what I got. Thank you so much for joining me here today. We'll see you in the next video. You have a good rest of your day. Take care. Thank you.